Hello? In this video, you will hear 3 scary stories told by my friends on the phone. Subscribe for motivation for the next video. Story 1. Lakeside Road. A friend and I went camping in Washington State for the weekend. Only one of us came back. No, he didn't die, but what we saw that night changed our relationship forever. Here's what happened. My name is Tyler. I'm 27 years old. And this story takes place 2 years ago in the fall, when my best friend Jake and I decided to go camping at Lake Quinault in Washington State. Jake found a spot on one of those free camping apps. It was a wild camping spot on a forest road about a mile from the lakeshore, away from the official campground. No fees, no neighbors, no amenities, just what we needed. We were both working in pretty stressful jobs at the time, and we just wanted to get away from it all for a few days. We left on a Friday afternoon and got to the spot about an hour before sunset. The road there was typical for the Pacific Northwest, narrow, wet from constant moisture, thick forest on both sides, the sky almost invisible through the treetops. The navigator got lost somewhere in the last 2 miles, and we were guided by the description from the forum. The clearing turned out to be not bad, small, with an old fire in the middle. Someone had clearly been here before. We set up tents, cooked food on a burner, and spent the evening as usual. Drank a little, talked about nothing. By 11 o'clock at night, both of us had already gone to bed. The next morning, Jake woke up first. When I got out of the tent, he was standing in the middle of the clearing and just looked somewhere in the direction of the trees. I asked, "What happened?" He was silent for 3 seconds, and then said, "Look at the fire." I looked. Someone had made a fire. At night, while we were sleeping, someone had carefully laid out the firewood in a star shape and lit it. The fire had burned down, but the heat was still warm. That meant it hadn't happened all that long, maybe a few hours ago. Maybe less. My first thought was that some other camper had found our clearing and decided to start a fire, unceremoniously, but nothing criminal. But then Jake showed me something else. Around our campfire, for about 10 feet, the ground was marked with footprints, human footprints. They went in circles, over and over in the same circle, as if someone had been walking around the campfire for a long time, while we slept a few steps away. We tried not to make too much of it. What else could we do? The person had left, taken nothing, touched no one. We had breakfast and went for a walk along the lake. Everything had looked normal during the day. Lake Quinault in the fall was something incredible. The mist over the water, the silent forest around, no tourists. We spent a few hours there and returned to camp, feeling satisfied. But when we got back, I immediately noticed something had changed. My tent was open. I had zipped it up, a habit I had had since the first time a raccoon crawled into my tent. I always zip it up, but now it was exactly halfway open. I went inside and checked my things. Everything was there, absolutely everything, but something felt different, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. It was just a feeling that someone was there, looking at my things. Jake said his tent was open too. He even made a habit of leaving a small rock at the entrance. If the tent was opened, the rock would fall out. The rock would be inside. We decided to stay another night. We both pretended not to be scared, but neither of us slept well that night. I lay there listening to the forest. Sometime after 2 in the morning, I heard footsteps. Slow, measured steps, very close. They circled my tent once, stopped, and then continued on into the darkness. In the morning, we gathered in silence and drove off. Already on the highway, Jake said that he had heard footsteps too, and that he had heard something else that he did not want to talk about that night. He said that after the footsteps, someone was standing by his tent and quietly, almost inaudibly, counting something. Just numbers, in order. We did not talk about that trip again. A few months later, Jake moved to Texas, and we almost stopped talking. I do not know if there is a connection between these events. Probably not. but I sometimes think about those footsteps in the dark and about someone standing there, counting something while we tried to sleep. I stopped at a free campground in the Utah desert for one night. My neighbor seemed a little odd, but harmless. At 4 in the morning, I realized how wrong I was. My name is Chris, 32 years old. Denver, pickup truck, and no specific plan. I just get in and go. I stop wherever I want, sleep in the back under a tarp. My business, my freedom. I've done this dozens of times, and never once did I even think that something could go wrong. I've driven through deserts, forests, mountains, and plains. I've slept under stars in places so remote that the world feels suspended, as if time itself forgot about you. And yet, that night, something felt different. This time I was traipsing through southern Utah. I stopped at a free dispersed camping campground. Near Bryce Canyon, a spot I found on Io, a small open plain among red rocks, a few parking lots, no amenities, no rangers. Just what I needed. The desert was quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against your ears. The air was dry but not cold, the kind that scratches your throat when you breathe too fast. I arrived around 6 in the evening. There was already a camper van in the parking lot, a big white van, old, with stickers on the bumpers. It was at the far end of the plain, far enough away not to be in the way. I parked, set up the sleeping berth in the back, and cooked dinner on the stove. The smell of sautéing onions and coffee mixed with the earthy scent of the desert around me. A normal evening, an hour later, while I sat and watched the sun bleed behind the red rocks, a man got out of the van. He waved, and I waved back. Then he slowly walked toward me. His name was Doug. He looked about 50, thin, and spoke very quietly. His movements were slow, deliberate. We talked for about 10 minutes, the usual traveler chatter, where he'd been, where he'd gone, what he'd seen. Nothing suspicious, but there was something about him. Not right. It's hard to put into words. He seemed to be listening too intently. He didn't interrupt. He didn't look away. He just looked straight at me and caught every word. That's the feeling you get when you realize that a person remembers. Every little thing you say, every small gesture, they store it, like a photograph of you in their mind. Before he left, he said one sentence. He said, "Sometimes companies stop here, especially at night. They're not always friendly." I asked what he meant. He just shrugged and walked away, melting into the shadows. I didn't really bother. I thought, maybe the local youth come to get drunk in the desert. It's a common thing at these parking lots. I laughed quietly to myself and went about the usual rituals of setting up my temporary home. I went to bed around 10. In the back of the pickup truck, I sleep like a dead man. The desert is completely dark. The stars overhead, a sweeping black sky punctuated with pinpricks of light. The quiet is absolute, almost tactile. I usually pass out in a minute. That night, I woke up at 3:47. I know the exact time because I immediately grabbed my phone. I don't know what woke me up. Bay just opened my eyes sharply, and immediately I heard voices. Quiet, even, very close. I raised my head and saw them through the glass of the back window. 3 figures. They stood around my pickup truck on 3 sides each, about 3 meters away, motionless, talking quietly to each other. In the darkness I couldn't make out faces, only silhouettes, tall, deliberate shapes. Their presence pressed into me like a cold, heavy hand. I froze. My heart was pounding so hard I could physically hear it. I lay there, trying to figure out what the hell was going on, every nerve screaming. My mind raced. Was it thieves? Someone looking for trouble? I remembered Doug's words, his eyes that seemed to have stored more than a casual conversation should allow. A minute or two later, one of the figures came up to the side and tapped on the metal. Once, quietly, but clearly. It wasn't random. It was a message, deliberate. I did the only thing that came to mind. Die. Turned on all the lights at once. Headlights, brake lights, hazard lights. The entire plane lit up like daylight. They were there. 3 men, all in the dark, all staring straight at me. They stood still for a second, like statues, then calmly walked away into the darkness. They didn't run, they walked. slowly and confidently. I started the engine and drove away. Without thinking, without grabbing anything, I just stepped on the gas. When I passed the place where Doug had been standing, it was empty. He had disappeared, as if he had never existed. I still don't know who these people were. I don't know who Doug really is, or where he went in the middle of the night, but I do know one thing for sure. That knock on metal was intentional. Someone wanted me to know they were there, and I still can't figure out why. Since that night, every time I camp, I can't shake the feeling of being watched. The desert, which once felt like freedom, now feels alert. Even in its silence, it seems to hum with things I can't see. I tell myself I was lucky, or maybe I was chosen. I'll never know. Last summer, I went camping alone in the woods of Michigan. On the third day, I found something that made me realize someone had been following me since the first night and leaving me messages. My name is Ashley. I'm 25 years old, and I live in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I've been solo camping for 3 years and have done enough trails to not be scared by every noise in the woods. But what happened last August in Hiawatha National Forest in the Upper Peninsula was different. I planned a 5-day hike. I made the itinerary myself. A few official trails and 2 days of wild camping in an area that most people don't get to because the road there is boring and has no viewpoints. That's why I chose it. The first 2 days were perfect. Quiet, lots of wild blueberries, a few beautiful lakes. I slept well, the food was okay, and the weather was good. On the third day, I went a little off my route to find a place for my next camp, and I came upon an old fire road, a narrow dirt road that had clearly not been used for a long time, but was passable enough. I walked along it for about a mile and stopped. On either side of the road, at regular intervals about every 20 feet, were sticks. Vertical sticks, stuck into the ground, about waist high. There were 12 of them on one side and 12 on the other. Perfectly even spacing, exactly the same height. Someone had put time and effort into it. I stopped and stared at them for a long time. Nothing mystical about their appearance, just sticks. But their very presence here, in a place that no one clearly goes to, spoke of something inexplicable. I took a few photos and moved on. I found a place to camp by a small stream, pitched my tent, and went to bed earlier than usual, because the day had seemed long in the middle of the night. I woke up to the smell, smoke. Someone had lit a fire somewhere nearby. In the night forest, the smell of smoke travels far, so I couldn't tell exactly how far away it was, maybe 200 yards, maybe more. I listened for a few minutes. Silence. Just the forest and somewhere far away the crackling of fire. I didn't leave my tent. I just lay there listening until the smell began to fade. Then I fell back asleep. In the morning I found the first message right in front of the entrance to my tent. On the ground lay 9 pebbles. An even row, perfectly straight, each pebble about the same size. Not like they could have fallen by chance. Someone had placed them on purpose, one after the other while I was asleep. I stepped back from the tent and looked around. Nothing. Forest, morning light, silence. I took a picture and began to think about what to do. Should I leave immediately? But I still had almost a day's walk before I could leave the forest. Should I stay? But someone clearly knows where I am. I decided to walk, but in the direction of the exit, not along my original route. I quickly gathered myself and set off. After 3 hours of walking, I stopped for a break and then noticed the second message. On the trunk of a pine tree, about eye level, someone had carved an arrow. Fresh, the wood inside was still light. The arrow pointed exactly in the direction I had just come from. I don't know what it meant. Maybe someone wanted me to turn back. Maybe it was just marking my path. But combined with the pebbles and the fire at night, I didn't want to analyze it anymore. I reached the car while it was still light and drove away without stopping. When I got home, I downloaded the photo to my phone and showed it to a friend who is a survivalist and knows the Michigan woods well. He looked at the sticks on the road, at the pebbles, at the arrow. Then he said, "The 9 pebbles are no accident. In some traditions, they mean a warning. 9 is the number of no return." I don't know if he was right, but I'm glad I didn't stay another night to find out.